Only mode.
Thank you for attending our webinar today on how to get a scholarship. It's presented by International Student Loan. My name is Brianna Davis. I'm the Marketing Coordinator at International Student Loan. And today I'm here with Victoria Truppi, who is also a Marketing Coordinator, as well as Jennifer Frankel, who is the Director of Financial Services at International Student Loan. So before we get started, I'd like to first say if you have any questions at any point throughout the webinar, please feel free to either send those in through the webinar chat feature, or you can also jump onto Twitter. We have our handle below, International Student Loans, and you can join us in a conversation on Twitter using the hashtag #FinancialAidTalk. So please feel free to send in your questions during any time, and we'll go ahead and address those at the end for you and get those answered. So let's go ahead and dive right in to the webinar. So looking at what we'll be covering today, first we're going to talk a bit at what is a scholarship. After that, we will touch on how you can find a scholarship. And then once you actually find a scholarship, you'll need to know how to apply. So we'll be giving you a few tips and tricks on how you can apply, but apply with an impact. So apply with the purpose of actually receiving that award. And then at the end, as I mentioned before, we'll go ahead and answer any questions that you may have. So first, looking at what is a scholarship. Essentially, a scholarship is free money. Now, it's not just money for you to be able to use anywhere. It's, of course, going to be money for you to use towards your education. And in most of your cases, it's going to be used towards your international education. Now, the great thing about scholarships, as opposed to using your own personal funds or loans, which I'm sure you may have to use as well, but one of the benefits of scholarships is that you don't have to repay a scholarship. So once again, it's free money at the time that you're not having to repay later. So it's a great option to help fund your education. Now, just because it's free, it doesn't mean that it's easy. So there is going to be a bit of work involved in getting a scholarship. But we're going to touch a little bit later on how you can really put yourself out there and get as much scholarship aid as possible. So first we're going to look at different types of scholarships. Now it's important to know that with each of these types, there's also two different places that you can look for them. So there's really two categories that you can turn to, and that's going to be through your institution, so the college or the university that you're attending, but then also through private means. So you can turn to both of those different outlets for each of these different types of scholarships. Now the first option here is academic. So this may be based upon your GPA or certain test scores such as the ACT or SAT or those similar to those. Now typically there's going to be different requirements within this academic type of scholarship. But don't automatically assume that because you don't have the best GPA, you're going to be eliminated. So it's always good to keep this option open. And then next we have athletic. So if you are really interested in playing a certain sport, or if you really excel in a certain sport, then use that to your advantage and see what scholarship options are available both through your school and then also through private institutions. And getting an athletic scholarship at your school can really work to your advantage in that you get to not only get money to play that sport, but you can represent your sport or you can represent your school through your sport and really get involved and get to know others through that way as well. Next we have special interest. So perhaps you're really active in choir or with art, or you play a musical instrument. You'll want to see if there's any special interest scholarships available to what it is that you're interested in. Now the good thing about this type is that there's typically not going to be as many individuals applying for this type of scholarship as, say, a general school scholarship. So it's really good, it's a great option to really search for those and zone in on what it is that you're interested in and try to get an award through that means. So next we have situational, and there's a few categories under situational, but the first one here is going to be based on income. So if you're able to show that there's a need for financial aid, then you'll want to try to find scholarships that will grant you funds based upon being able to show that need. And then we have achievement. Perhaps you're very active in the volunteer world. You really put yourself out there and volunteer for a lot of different events. Then you'll want to see if you can find an award that will give you funds for that. Or perhaps you're very active within different types of organizations, such as you're the president or the treasurer, then you'll want to try to really stress that you have shown that achievement for those types of awards. And then we have field of study. If you're studying perhaps biology or nursing, then you'll want to see what different types of scholarships are available based upon the field of study that you're going to pursue. And we'll get into later how you can find these different types of scholarships, especially this one, as there's many different types of outlets on your college or university campus that you can turn to for this. Next, we have country-specific, and this can go both ways. It can be that you can find a scholarship based upon where you're from and both where you're going. And then lastly, we have school-specific. So many schools will have scholarships that they're willing to grant you, primarily for the fact that you're attending the school. So that's a very great opportunity, and it's a very basic one, but then also you may also be able to find a scholarship through your school that will grant you aid because you're an international student. So that's another outlet that you will want to look at. So next, we're going to look at how do you find a scholarship. And I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Jennifer Frankel, and she will go ahead and tell you a bit more about how you can find a scholarship. It appears we're having just a bit of technical difficulties, but if you can just hold tight, we will be right back up with you and give you more information on finding a scholarship.
And so the important thing to remember is, how do you find a scholarship? And the way to do that is to think about who you are and what sets yourself apart from everybody else. So to do that, here are 8 questions to ask yourself so that you know what it is that makes yourself a candidate that is separated from the rest and that stands out. So the first question you're going to want to ask yourself is, what are your interests? What are you good at? It's important to know what it is that makes you stand out. What are your skills, for example? So think about any sort of scholarships that you received before. Perhaps you've received awards or different merits based on these skills or interests of yours. So think about that and then identify those scholarships in which to apply for. Additionally, you'll want to think about where you're from. There are many, many scholarships out there that will be based on either your home country or may also be governmental scholarships that will be based on, again, your home country. So think about that as you identify different awards to apply to. There are 2 types of scholarships. There are ones that have based on your need, and then there are other based on your merit. So identify which one you apply to, because if you do not need the money, then you will not be able to apply for those academic need-based scholarships. So think more in terms of those merit-based scholarships. Additionally, it's important to think about your academics. What are you studying? Are you studying biology? Are you studying chemistry? What is it that you enjoy doing? What do you want to pursue in your academic career? And then, what school are you attending? Many universities and colleges do provide scholarships to students when they either arrive initially or even based on their performance in the school. And then finally, what is it that you're studying? As I mentioned, if you're studying biology, you may be able to go and talk to your department and get additional funds, or there are also other institutions that can give you money as well. The STEMs, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, are all really great areas of study and have a high demand. So if you are in one of those fields of study, you may have a higher chance of getting one of those awards. So now that you know more about yourself as you ask those questions, the next question is, where can you look? The first place that most international students start with is their university or college. When you submit your application, you'll probably, depending on the school, be applying to your admissions department. And in that admissions department, many times you can opt into different scholarships. It's important to make sure, though, that you talk to your admissions department to know what it is that you need to submit, if there's any additional documentation, and also what the deadlines are. You'll also want to talk to your international center. Your International Center could be a great resource for you, and that usually you'll get an international student advisor who will be able to guide you throughout your education. Talk to your international student advisor, be friends with your international student advisor, and they'll be able to guide you as to which awards are available on campus as they deal with this on a regular basis. The next place within your university that you can touch base with to see if there are scholarships is your Department of Study. So whether that's the business school or the humanities department, talk to them and let them know what your career passions are and where you want to take your education. That could end up leaving you with some extra funds, whether a partial scholarship or a full ride. There are also many students who come to universities in the U.S. with academic and athletic department scholarships. Usually this is given out by the coach. Depending on soccer, basketball, football, all of these are relevant areas of athletics that you can get awarded a scholarship. And many of them are very good scholarships, so talk to the coach, let them know your abilities, and there are also many separate organizations that will help you get you in touch with those coaches to showcase your skills and could also lead to your scholarship. A large area that's been growing recently has been home country government awards and also host country government awards. If you are from Brazil or Saudi Arabia or Iraq, for example, many of your home countries do provide funds to help you do exchange programs. Make sure to look at your own personal home country government to see if they support any international exchange funding, as many of them are starting to, and as we're seeing a higher trend in that. As I mentioned, there's host country government awards also. So if you're coming to the USA, for example, there's an organization called Education USA that also provides extra funding for you. And then finally, there are international organizations. That includes nonprofit organizations, international organizations, and multinational companies. All of these organizations provide different funding opportunities for international students depending on their mission. So it's important to keep your net wide, to look at all of these areas and keep your eyes open. But that could be easier said than done. So I'm going to show you a few different websites where you can look that'll help you compile all the different awards that are available. The first one we'll start with is iefa.org. And here you can see that there is a number of different resources for financial aid, including scholarships. In fact, on this you can search scholarships, grants, and fellowships, and you just narrow it down by simply either selecting the award name if you already know it, or alternatively, you can choose where you are studying, what you're studying, and where you're from. You would simply click down, let's say we're studying aviation, and we can search, and then we'll be able to see what awards are available to us, and it will also show us our nationality and location, so that way we know what award is available for whom. Another website that can be of great help is fundingusstudy.org. Here you can see that you can search again by program, by sponsor organization, area of study, state location, and region. So for example, if you want to come to Florida, or if you're already studying in Florida, you can click Florida and you'll be matched with 15 different programs here, from undergraduate scholarships to graduate scholarships, merit-based scholarships. So this is a great place to look. And again, these are all places that you can look for an international education. So you won't be given any matches that are for domestic student. The third area that I want to point out is internationalscholarships.com. This website also lets you search by various criteria, including what you are studying, where you are from, and where you are going and where you're from, and where you're studying, excuse me. So there's also the area where you can search by independent award listing. That would be if you wanted to search an award specific to your institution. You would simply click down and search. And once you find the one that you want to search for, so let's say I like this one right here, you can simply click it, and then you'll be able to get an overview of those different awards, and then you can register now to contact the administration to get more information on the scholarship and to search your awards. Now I'm going to turn it over to Victoria Trupig, and she's going to talk to you more about your application and what you need to do to have all your information together so that it's clear, concise, and sets you apart from the rest.
Thanks, Jenny. So after you find a scholarship that you feel like you can apply for and win, the question is, how can you apply and make your application great so you actually do win that scholarship? So the secret is to put an application together with everything that's required that makes you really stand out from the crowd. So I have on the slide here in front of us an example on the right-hand side of a typical scholarship requirement. And you'll see 5 things that are generally included that need to be included in your application. The first one is a scholarship essay. Sometimes this topic is given to you, not always, but it is the most important thing that you should consider when putting together your application. Secondly, you should usually submit a resume or a CV with your application as well, along with transcripts. You'll notice on the example here that you're required to have a minimum overall grade of B or better in previous coursework. And what that generally means is that you will need to submit your transcripts from your previous courses, schools, colleges, or even high school. Additionally, letters of recommendation are usually required, and sometimes you'll be required to submit there'll be a fee for submission to enter the scholarship as well, so that's something to keep in mind also. So like I mentioned, the essay that you write is the most important piece of the application. An essay or other written submission is often the only time the award committee will hear your perspective on why you feel you deserve this scholarship. So it's very important to make it as compelling as possible. Sometimes you can read over past winners' essays so that you kind of know what the judges are looking for. But the most important part to consider is to start brainstorming early for your essay. Don't wait until the last minute. Really give yourself enough time to put some ideas on paper so you really know what direction you want to go with it. Secondly, after you've brainstormed and come up with your direction, you should create an outline. An outline should include everything you want to talk about, and it should be laid out in a logical order, leading from one topic to the next, so that you can have a more solid and coherent feel with your essay. And once you have your outline written, you can write an original essay and write it well. Your essay should really emphasize your strengths and why you deserve this scholarship. So really concentrate on this and spend a lot of time. Letters of recommendation, as I mentioned, are also usually required for your application. Letters of recommendation are typically written by faculty in your field of study, a previous professor or teacher who can really speak to your qualifications in academia. Sometimes they're also written by supervisors in your career field or former employers or colleagues that can really speak to your character and work ethic as well. If a letter of recommendation isn't required, sometimes a list of references is required. So in that case, you can just include a list, 2 or 3 references, the same type of people, faculty or supervisors that you've had in the past, and be sure to include their name, title, and contact information, because the scholarship committee will contact them directly so that they can speak to your qualifications. A resume is usually required as well, and it's really important to customize your resume for the scholarship that you're applying for. This can be reflected in the objective on your resume. Always be sure to put your most impressive education or employment history at the top of the resume, so it's the first thing that they see to really catch their attention. Also, be sure to insert keywords into your resume that are specifically written in the scholarship description or qualifications that they're looking for, so that it catches their eye and they really see you as a qualified applicant for the scholarship. Additionally, really emphasize your related accomplishments and qualifications, such as volunteer work, clubs you're associated with, any awards that you've received for academia or other things that can really make you stand out apart from the crowd. And never ever forget to have a friend or family member proofread your resume before submitting it. A cover letter is also a good recommendation to submit with a resume, just like you would for any job interview or application. That can help you stand out from the crowd as well. And lastly, to prove that you are academically capable of pursuing higher education, a transcript is usually required. The scholarship description will tell you what type of transcript is required. Sometimes it's just an unofficial transcript, which you can usually download on your school's website, or an official transcript might also be required. And an official transcript is a little bit more complicated to get. It's usually signed and sealed and then mailed directly from your school registrar. So you'll need to request these official type of transcripts early to make sure they get to your scholarship committee on time. And it's often a good idea to request a few all at once so that you have them, so you don't have to wait for them later on. So in conclusion, just to kind of give you a brief synopsis of what we've talked about today, we wanted you to realize that scholarships are available, especially for international students. They are out there. The most important thing to consider is really perfect your application to increase your chances of winning. And resources are available to help you. All of the websites that Jennifer showed you are available, and also resources regarding essay writing, resume building, etc., to really help your application are on these websites. And if you join us on Twitter, we're going to put up some links to some of those specific resources. So be sure to join us and to look on our hashtag feed, and we'll put those up here in just a few minutes. So now I'm going to hand it over to Brianna. We're going to answer some of the questions that you guys have come up with. So feel free to send those over in the webinar chat or on the Twitter feed as well.
Okay, thank you so much. So we have had a few questions that have come in, and we'll go ahead and we'll address those right now. So the first one is, should I follow up on a scholarship application? So typically you don't want to bombard those who are granting you a scholarship with an update on if they've decided. So typically I would say only after the deadline, if you have not heard anything or if you have not seen any results as to who the winner is. That's really the only case that you would want to follow up on that scholarship. And let's see, we have another one here. It says, I found a scholarship that requires me to pay to apply. Is this safe and typical? So while you want to use caution for those that require you to pay in order to apply, I would say as long as you do your research and you find out that it's a reliable institution and it's a reliable scholarship, then there's typically not a problem with having to pay a small fee. As Victoria mentioned, there are a few scholarships that do require a small fee, and it's typically going to be an administration fee. So it might be to process those, or it may be that all of those funds go into the lump sum that's being awarded to the students. So while it's typical, you will definitely want to do your research before you sign away a large amount. Okay, we have a question on what are keywords. So Victoria, whenever she was speaking about resumes, she mentioned that it's important to use certain keywords. So keywords are going to be specific words that stand out to those who are reviewing your application. Those might be words such as determined or motivated or proactive, really any type of positive word that you would want to convey what represents you. So those are different keywords. Okay, and it looks like those really were all of the questions. So I'd like to just thank you all for attending today. Hopefully you're able to benefit from the information that we have given you. Please feel free, if you would like more information, you can visit www.internationalstudentloan.com. That's there on the bottom. Or you can always email us at the email address info@internationalstudentloan.com. And then feel free to follow us as well on Twitter. And if you have any other questions that come up, you can always ask through any of those means, and we'll be happy to answer those for you. Now, if you go to internationalstudentloan.com, you can sign up for our feed, and you'll receive updated blogs with more information. The next one that we have coming up, it's going to give you some resources on how to find scholarships, different websites. So you want to make sure that you go to our site and you sign up for that feed right now. That way you can have access to that information. So thank you very much for